In this video, I'm making some accessories for a previous build. Stay tuned. Okay, here I'm making some windmill veins or blades. I'm going to have 4 in total, but I'm only actually making 2. I'm just going to make resin cast twice. I'm just roughing these out of 1/8 inch balsa wood. Nothing too fancy. I guess I could have used popsicle sticks here, but I didn't think about it. This balsa wood's pretty easy to cut with an X-Acto knife. Just doubling my pattern here. Now, in no way are these veins or blades accurate. I took quite a bit of artistic license with these. Just got some 80 grit sandpaper, smoothing over some of the rougher edges. There you go. These are going to be my supports. Again, balsa wood, cleaning that break up. And when I cast these, I'm going to want the backside completely flush, so I've got a little spacer there. Here, I've come up with some decorative little bracing. Again, artistic license, prevalent throughout this build. Gonna go with 8 of those cross-member pieces on each blade. Again, these are balsa wood, 1/8 inch thick. I'm not sure how wide. Maybe 3/8. Just kind of scoring that with the X-Acto knife and breaking them. Rough these up a little bit, whittling away, trying to make this look like roughly hewn wood. Rounding over the edges, making sure to keep my fingers out of the way, being careful not to chop myself. Trying to keep this intentionally pretty rough. Got both of those looking pretty gnarly at this point, and now I'm going to take a steel wire brush and accentuate some of that balsa wood grain. Got a little piece of cloth, canvas for the veins. It's going to be the surface texture. I'm hoping the silicone picks up this cloth pattern pretty well. I think it will. Hopefully it doesn't try to absorb in. That'd be a pain. We'll see what happens there. Okay, I'm cutting this canvas to size. Pair of scissors. I'm just covering the face of this. The edges I'm going to leave bare wood and hope that I can kind of come up with a makeshift pattern there that doesn't look too bad. I don't think I would be able to round this canvas over the edges very well. At least not easily. Tacky glue, little cheap acid brush I've got. Going over the surface in its entirety and slapping down this canvas. And I'm gluing down this brace. few dots of tacky glue for the decorative bracing I've done. Gonna be some gaps here that I'm going to go back over and fill in with a little watered down plaster, which I am also going to use to disguise the edges of these veins. Even though this windmill is wholly inaccurate, I think it's going to look pretty neat on the tabletop. Let those dry, and I'm going to put in this final piece here. It's going to give me that flat surface when I go to cast these. I'm not going to want any undercuts there. Got to fill it in. You're not going to be able to see that, or shouldn't be able to see it easily at least. And the windmill's on the table. Plaster of Paris. If I were just making these without intention of making silicone molds and resin castings, I would probably not use plaster here. I would use milliput, something along those lines, to fill in some of these gaps. This stuff isn't too durable, but I don't need it to be in the long run. I'm just taking a little water here and pre-wetting those surfaces, filling some of those gaps in with a little plaster. I'm not trying to cover the entire surface, just enough to fill in the crazy gaps and give the impression of cloth texture along the edges of those veins, blades. Got a few squares, odd shapes that I've cut out to act as patches that I am dipping in watered down tacky glue. And while the surface is still wet, I'm going to try to secure these down. I am going to try to pull some of these patches over the edges of these veins. It sort of works and lets me know that I would have had a hard time pulling that canvas over those edges in a piece that was large enough to cover the whole surface. The occasional patch isn't too bad. Just kind of submerge those, let them soak in some of that watered down tacky glue. Slap them into place, let them dry. Okay, now that those have dried, I am coming back and adding a little more detail. I've got some beads that I'm going to be super gluing down. Hopefully they'll end up looking structural. These things are kind of tough to get a hold of, but the tweezers are pretty good at putting them in place. I wouldn't really even attempt to do this with fingers. I'd end up super glued together. I don't want that. Okay, finished product. Well, you know, not quite, but close. Okay, now, this is going to be the roof for my windmill. I had a random little piece of paper there, don't worry about that. Bead of hot glue to make a cone. Pac-Man is now a cone. Clean up some of that excess. And I'm going to fill the bottom of this cone in. So here is my piece of paper for that. Oh, this is cardstock, by the way. Just cat food boxes. It's a reference point. This isn't completely symmetrical, so I needed that to help me with alignment. Just taking a heavy pair of shears here, something that doesn't mind cutting through a bead of hot glue that's dried. And there you go. That's what the roof's gonna look like, minus the shingles. Those are coming. Lots of them. Yeah, more cardstock, tacky glue, acid brush, tweezers. And this is how I make the shingles. Thought about going with the XPF foam here, but decided not to. I'm thinking that the tacky glue that I'm going to brush over this to seal it is going to act as texture enough. And this is quicker, kind of. Certainly cheaper and less hassle. These triangular shingles are going to come into play at the top, the point of my roof. But yeah, that's how those are made. Nothing too bad. Until now, putting these things down, probably, I don't know, had 3 hours in this. Not 3 hours at one time, mind you. I took breaks. This was tedious. I'm not too big on tedious, which is why I tend to cast a lot. Go ahead and make something somewhat generic so that I can make a ton of duplicates without having that much more work into it. That's why casting is so great. You just have to put in a lot of effort one time, and then you got it for as long as your mold lasts. And then you can just make a new mold. So yeah, just putting these down with tweezers, again, they're pretty helpful. If they get too much glue on them, they tend to hold on to the shingle, and that sucks, but it's better than your fingers for the most part. Though I kind of switch back and forth. I use the tweezers for the most part. And that is the finished texture on the lower run of the shingles. Just brush strokes of tacky glue. Kind of looks like cedar shakes, which is what I was going for. Minimal effort, which is good. Because this roof is hassle enough without having to worry about the texture. I think I made the right call going with cardstock, at least for me. You do you. But I like the final result of this. I think going over it with tacky glue after you've got the shingles in place is a nice little touch. By the end, they don't necessarily look like cardstock. But yeah, this wasn't too terribly fun. There you can see a window that I've made that I did not film. I don't know why. I just didn't. That's gonna be the receiver for the windmill blade structure. I don't know. But yeah, the window, I mean, you can look at it and you can tell what I did there. It's not too terribly complicated. And as you get to the top, the apex of the roof, it's getting close to time to switch to those triangular shingles. At this point, I started using thinner, narrower shingles. And incoming triangles. They still didn't work out perfectly. I ended up going with a milliput cap after I got all these into place. It didn't quite look right. it needed a little something else. See? Not quite right. So, kind of clean that up as best I could. Got everything situated about where I wanted it, and there you go. This is it dried after I've sealed everything with the tacky glue, and there you can see me with a chopstick trying to show you exactly how this is going to work out. Just imagine 2 more blades and there you go. Speaking of, it is time to make the receiver for the veins. I don't know what you'd call it, the hub, what have you. Going with some balsa wood squares here and some milliput. Now, for the decorative face, I'm using some thinner strips of balsa wood that I've cut 45-degree angles for the edges. I'll show you how I did that. With a little X-Acto knife and my cutting board. See? Nothing to it. Scuff that surface up, enhance that wood grain a little bit with some steel wire, or a steel wire brush, I guess. And I'm coming back with a sculpting tool and a ruler and adding in some plank lines, I guess you would say. I would say, I don't know what you would say. That's what I'm calling them, planks. Making it appear as though this is, multiple pieces of wood. See? Neat. Pull out the tacky glue and go over these edges. Add in that framing that I just made. Not too much glue here. Slap those little suckers into place. And time for a little more detail. Here I'm going with the beads that I used on the windmill blades. Honestly, I kind of wish I'd gone with something a little smaller, but it is what it is. 4 on each side. And that's it. Okay, milliput time. I've got a few gaps to fill here and there. I'm not really going to show you most of that. And here I'm just taking a little ball of this stuff and slapping it on the top of the tower roof. I'm going to come back later and sand away the excess. Here I am making that receiver for the windmill blades, vanes. It's primarily going to be milliput with that decorative surface. You can see in the corner there that I just made. See? That's about what it's going to look like finished. After this stuff dries, time to clean up those rough edges on the milliput. Trace that out, get an idea of what exactly I want to get rid of, what I want to keep. And again, I go with that 80 grit sandpaper. After it's cleaned up, this is what it looks like. Okay, this is the tower with the roof. That's it for the video. Stay tuned. See how this project all works out. Thanks for watching.